Hello and welcome to another episode of Starside Chat. I am one of your hosts, Aaron. With me as always is Zach. How's it going, Zach?
Good. It's a busy news week, surprisingly.
A dense news week. We have a small press conference to cover, but also several games came out, and there's been some other announcements in the news. Should we just dive right in? I mean, it's a packed show today.
Yeah, obviously the Xbox Developer Direct will be sort of the big feature this week, but we got some other news to get to first. So, what if I told you that Crystal Dynamics' beloved Marvel's Avenger game is going to be shut down soon? Would you be really bummed about it?
I didn't know it was already not shut down. What does that mean? Wait, is there an online component to it?
Yeah, don't you remember the Marvel's Avengers game from Crystal Dynamics was supposed to be that sort of live service Marvel superhero game?
Oh, I forgot it was live service. I watched someone play through a lot of it, not a lot of it, but a couple rounds or levels in it as, was it Kamala Khan was the person that you were?
Yeah.
But that completely slipped my mind that it was supposed to be some sort of Destiny-like. So wait, you're still going to be able to play it single player, though, I assume.
Everybody was initially excited because they're like, ooh, it's going to be like Destiny, but you're playing as Marvel characters. Ooh, that'll be cool. And then it came out and was very not cool and nobody liked it. So, I don't know. I don't know what that means. It just says they're ending development. And I think, if I remember correctly, the Game Informer article that I've linked in our show notes, they said that they were even going to delist it from digital storefronts, which seems crazy to me.
That is crazy. It's some HBO nonsense.
The game will also be delisted from digital storefronts on September 30th. So yeah, they're ending support for the game, which I guess if you already own it, you can maybe still play it, but
weird. I wonder
if you run into issues, they're not going to get fixed.
I wonder if it is a similar thing to HBO, where it's like some sort of tax write-off. Crystal Dynamics has to pay Marvel or some amount of money because it's like a licensed property or something. I don't know. I mean, I remember, now that I'm thinking about it, they were kind of supporting the game. There was that Black Panther DLC or update where he was a playable character. Then there was a Spider-Man update.
Yeah.
I think there was another one.
They did have a bunch of updates. There was a Winter Soldier one, I think.
That's right.
Well.
Yeah, I remember that.
But yeah, it just I don't think this game really ever caught on.
No.
It just never had as many players as they expected it to. But yeah, so I guess that's ending. I don't even know what to make of it. There's so many of these attempted live service games to fail that even when you tie a Marvel brand to it, it can't succeed. So I don't know. I feel like maybe it's time to stop trying with the whole live service thing.
Well, Destiny was always supposed to only be a 10-year project, and we're approaching 9 years. Or
I was going to ask you about that at some point. Do you think they're really going to stick to the whole 10-year thing, or is it going to just be an ongoing thing now?
Bungie claims, there's those rumors. I think they've announced even that they're working on another IP that is wholly separate from Destiny. And I wonder if at this point they're also tired of Destiny and they're just we need to stop this story and start fresh. And because they had that weird hiccup when Destiny 2 came out where I think they were still with Activision. It was kind of a problem. So I could see them being hey, this is it. This is our next thing. Stop playing Destiny 2 immediately. We're delisting it.
Yeah. Oh, and it is a little bit of a shame for game preservation sake that if you did play Marvel's Avengers, for instance, and you liked it, it's just going away. In 5 years' time when you're oh, remember that game? I should go back and just play it just for nostalgia. You won't be able to do that. So I don't know. The only people that did enjoy Marvel's Avengers were recommending don't worry about any of the live service stuff. Yeah. Literally just play it as a Kamala Khan single player game, and
it
you'll
was.
enjoy
I
it.
feel like that all was just tacked on for like how can we do microtransactions and stuff like that, or like how can we increase the longevity of this so people keep playing it after the fact, and it was not necessary.
Yeah, and there is like, I was thinking about this because that Monster Hunter Rise game just came to like Game Pass, and it's now been released for like the next gen consoles. And so I was thinking about it as like they kind of have like a solid model where it's sort of not a live service game, but they have almost Diablo style where there is like an end game to it, and that keeps like the really like, you know, big Monster Hunter fans, that keeps them invested even after they've like finished the main story. And there's sort of always something to work towards in terms of like going on different hunts to be able to craft different weapons and armor sets, and then they'll throw a big DLC at the game, and that brings everybody back in again. And so they don't have this whole thing of it's a live service, so we're expecting to do like regular updates, and we need like a strong player base, and we got to keep them satisfied. They don't have to deal with that, but also there's enough of an end game there to keep people playing. I feel like if Marvel's Avengers had been a little bit more in line with something like that, it probably would have not been considered the disaster that it is.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Well, anyway, that's, I don't even know what else to say about that, but I never played it, you never played it, and now it's gonna not be a thing. So
that's probably true of a lot of games.
True. But what if I told you there was going to be a new Steam World game?
Huh?
Steam World Build. This one actually, I don't really get into like this type of a game, but this seems like something that might be up your alley.
You know, the last like city builder type thing I played was a long time ago, and it was City Skylines. Right when it came out, before it had like all of its DLCs or whatever. And I enjoyed that. But I don't know. Back in the day, I very much was someone who was very into like Age of Empires 2 and like Age of Mythology and things like that. But I haven't really gotten into like the what would you call this type of game actually? Strategy?
Yeah, I don't know. Like
city builder, I guess.
City builder, maybe?
Yeah, I haven't really gotten into it recently, but I'm pro this like line of games because it's very cool and interesting to keep revisiting the same universe but as different types of games.
Yeah.
I know you really liked SteamWorld Dig 2, right?
Yeah, SteamWorld Dig 2 was very good. Highly recommend that game. I've been meaning to play that SteamWorld Quest game because I think that seems like a cool game to have like a turn-based RPG as opposed to like SteamWorld Dig 2 is more of like a Metroidvania style game.
Yeah, but I'm into this. I'm pro this. I probably won't play it, but I'm all about the SteamWorld games and them progressing and making even crazier games in the same universe.
Yeah, the devs said that they have 4 like separate SteamWorld games like in development right now. I don't know if that includes SteamWorld Build or if it's 4 additional games. But that's cool. I don't know. I think everybody would love to have like another, you know, SteamWorld Dig style game or even another SteamWorld Quest game. But people also liked SteamWorld Heist, which I never played.
I don't even know what that one is.
I just know the name of it and that some people liked it, but I don't think that one was as big as some of their other titles. But I don't know what kind of game it was. But yeah, I'm like you. I think it's cool that they basically have their own cinematic universe and they just make wildly different games set within that universe. And so every release is something completely different. But are you a fan of Fallout New Vegas?
Yes, that actually is possibly the only Fallout I've ever beaten completely.
Really? You didn't finish Fallout 3? Or Fallout 4?
I got pretty far in both of those, but I kind of fell off in both of them. But Fallout New Vegas, the story was just so interesting. I really wanted to see. At some point, you're just like, you're looking for your dad in Fallout 4, and it's just like, I get it. I'm fine. And then Fallout 3, I'm struggling to remember the plot points of that. You get out of the vault.
That's the one where Matthew Perry like shoots you, and you're like a messenger, and you.
No, Fallout 3 is the one I can't remember.
Oh, you can't remember Fallout 3? Fallout 3 is the one in DC, and yeah, your dad's Liam Neeson, and he like flees the vault.
I thought you were looking for your dad in 4. Oh no, 4 was the one where you're frozen and you're looking for your son.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, now I remember what Fallout 3 is. I thought that was Fallout 4. Okay, I get that. But yeah, neither of those really were interesting to me. But the story of New Vegas, and also I think I played New Vegas at just like a time in my life where I was really ready for something like a really deep RPG to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. I loved going up and meeting. Was it House? Was there? What was the robot guy? Was it Mr. House?
Oh yeah. There's it's a little almost Skyrim-y where there's like a bunch of different quest lines, and there's like a whole bunch tied to like the Las Vegas Strip, where there's like a bunch of different sort of quest threads to pull on there, and doing stuff for Mr. House is one of them.
But I loved it.
What was the robot that you kind of befriend and work with?
Man, I don't remember at all. But I remember that was great. That part was like very cool to me because I feel like you go into the hotel and you're like looking for stuff, and then you come upon that robot and there's like a false wall that you go into with him. I don't really remember actually. It's been a long time since I played that game. But that was the one I beat. Fallout New Vegas is probably my favorite Fallout. And I think that's true for a lot of people.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me and a lot of other people, New Vegas is considered the best of the modern Fallout games. And we bring it up and talk way too much about how much we like New Vegas, just to say that it's possible that we will either get a sequel to New Vegas or just another game from the developer Obsidian, who made New Vegas, not Bethesda, who made Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. Because now that they are under the same umbrella, under Microsoft, news has come out this week that the Obsidian CEO was doing an interview, I think, maybe, and he said he'd love to make another Fallout before he retires. Now, obviously, that's not like confirmation that one is going to happen, but like everybody's eyes lit up when Microsoft bought Bethesda because they already owned Obsidian. And so everybody was like, ooh, we could get a sequel to Fallout New Vegas or just another one from that team because we really like their take on it. So not like a confirmation or anything, but I mean, it's an obvious choice to reunite the Fallout franchise with Obsidian. So it would be very cool. And I would very much like that to happen.
They're still working on the Outer Worlds too, right?
Yeah, so that's the thing about this is they have a bunch of different things they're working on that they started, separate to Bethesda having been purchased by Microsoft. So they've got the Outer Worlds, and they have already confirmed that the Outer Worlds 2 is in development. So that's coming. And I like the first one a lot, so I'm definitely looking forward to the second one. And then they also have that sort of Skyrim-y fantasy game that I cannot remember the name of. I think it starts with an A.
Avowed,
yeah, that's it. So we've not heard about that game in a long time, but I feel like they are probably working on Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed and probably do not have the capacity to also be developing a Fallout game. But I mean, they also made Pentiment out of nowhere, so who knows?
That's true.
So yeah, I would definitely love to play another Fallout developed by Obsidian, but I will also take Outer Worlds 2 and Avowed, so not complaining.
What about this Naughty Dog news?
So yeah, this also came out this last week that Neil Druckmann basically says he's not going to pressure Sony into making The Last of Us Part 3. So you said you were sure that it would be a trilogy and there would have to be another one after this last game.
I mean, based on the end of the second game, it seemed to me that there was a very good idea for a third game that they were sort of just leading up for. But I don't know. He also, I read about this, and I read that he said a very similar thing like 6 months before Last of Us 2 was announced, where he was like, I don't know if we're going to make a Last of Us 2 unless we have a right story. And then 6 months later, they were like, this is The Last of Us Part 2. So it might just be him being like, I don't know. I will say...
Like, well, yeah, and the wording of he's not going to pressure Sony into making one is like, that means nothing.
The TV show is doing great. And I read something where like, I think it was Jeff Keighley tweeted like, it's some statistic they pulled where like from viewership from the first show to the second show jumped a crazy amount, like the highest of any other HBO original show. Like the first episode had like X amount of viewers, and the second episode had like some amount more, like 80% more or something. I don't know if that's the number, but people are really into, so far, the show, and they just announced this week that the second season has been greenlit. And so, I don't know. I feel like it's not a hard decision for, like, I feel like Naughty Dog isn't in the situation where they're like, we don't want to make Sony do this. I feel like they're in the situation where Sony is like, hey, do this. Like, you're doing this. It's doing really well. Everyone likes it. And the show's doing really well. And you got to crank this out before we're ready for season 3. So I don't know. I think he might just be being coy.
Yeah, that could be. They are also working on that like standalone multiplayer game in the Last of Us universe.
True, that is true. I keep forgetting about that because I am not super interested in it, but who knows? Maybe it will be interesting and weird. I don't understand why it exists, but I guess it is happening.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a franchise designed for multiplayer, but I guess you can put multiplayer in just about anything if you really want to.
I don't know. It almost, the way he describes it almost sounds like a kind of like an Escape from Tarkov type game. Because a lot of Last of Us is scrounging for stuff and like trying to get back to a safe area. So I don't know. I don't even remember what it's called. But it is, I believe it takes place after Last of Us Part 2 in the chronology. And I don't remember where it's set either. But I know it's set somewhere new. You know what it is? I think it might be set in San Francisco. I don't remember. But if it is set in San Francisco, then that's, I believe, where I was expecting the third game to start. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I'm just reading through this article that we have linked in our show notes, and Druckmann was saying that like Uncharted 4 was like one of their best-selling games, and that series was insanely successful for them, but they felt like they had gotten all they wanted or needed to out of it, and so they're ready to move on from that. So like Uncharted, for sure, I think there is done. They're moving on from that, and there probably won't be any more Uncharted games. But The Last of Us, I feel like they will probably at the very least make one more like mainline game in addition to probably that multiplayer game.
I feel like they have to.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see.
Well, so in completely separate news, one of BioWare's sort of longtime writers has left BioWare after 19 years. Whoa. So Mac Walters, who worked on, I think, all 3 of the Mass Effect games, but he was like a lead writer on Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3. And he was working as like a production director on Dragon Age Dreadwolf, which is the next Dragon Age game. He has left. And so a little bit of a bummer because I feel like more and more of the sort of core group of that, like the heyday of BioWare is just like leaving for who knows what. I don't know what he's going to do next, but like obviously Casey Hudson, like he was one of the, big names in BioWare during their heyday, and he left and he made his own studio. Mark Dare is another one, mainly with like the Dragon Age team, but I don't know what Mark Dare is doing anymore other than like YouTube videos. So yeah, it's a weird thing. I think I saw that BioWare did like maybe even a year or 2 ago, they were able to get like maybe the lead writer of that Guardians of the Galaxy game.
Oh, I heard that was good.
Yeah, it was good. I played it and liked it.
And you told me that.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and I was like, you know what? BioWare needs to pull a page from this Guardians of the Galaxy game for like the ship like conversations, like the crew conversations. Yeah. And so the fact that they have basically grabbed somebody from that team and like, hey, help us. I think that's a good move. So it's a little bit like, well, it's a shame that, Mac Walters, who's one of the, main writers behind 2 and 3 for Mass Effect, is like leaving before Mass Effect 4 comes out. But they have somebody else that could. It's one of those things where you're a little bit like, oh man, it's like they're losing the team, and so is this going to be as good? It's not going to be like a return to form from the original trilogy, but you're like, well, yeah, but the franchise is cool enough that if you get like some talented people in there, they could make something completely different and it'll still be great.
Yeah, I mean, the lore is so dense and rich. As long as they're like familiar with the lore and respect the lore, I feel like it's going to feel like a Mass Effect game.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see what Mass Effect 4 becomes, because I do love that series, but it's a shame that Mac Walters left, but it's also, I don't think, a sign that that game is necessarily troubled.
I have a question for you, Zach.
Okay.
Before we started recording, I was going to ask you this, but I decided to save it until we started recording. So here's my question now. We had the Xbox showcase or whatever, and I feel like we have to. I feel like we're close. We're right on the edge of a Starfield, some form of Starfield announcement and some form of Tears of the Kingdom announcement. And I wanted to know, which do you think we'll get first? Just the announcement.
What announcement for Tears of the Kingdom?
I guess just like more information about it. We've never really had we haven't had a deep dive about it really. There's never been like a preview to a press outlet even.
I feel like February is going to be the month we get a Nintendo Direct for Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah. Do you think that'll happen before or after we get a Starfield either delay or announcement?
I think Starfield's going to be delayed.
Yeah.
I'm fairly confident that they're going to delay it to the fall. Yeah. And Starfield will get like that Starfield specific developer showcase that they've already done a showcase for it, so it's weird to ask for another one. But yeah. Also, if they keep pushing it back, like they got to show something. Mm-hmm. You got to keep the hype levels out there. So I feel like we may see something like that, because they teased one to go along with this other Xbox developer showcase. They were true. Like, we want to show a bunch of Starfield, but we wanted to give it its own show, so we weren't just like throwing it in with like the handful of other games that we're showing off.
They had a post out this week. Xbox did.
Yeah, so they did have like a blog post on Xbox's website where they sort of went over all the stuff that was in the developer showcase that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But at the very end, there was like a little paragraph at the end where they're like, we announced there was going to be a deep dive for Starfield, and it was going to be its own standalone show. But then they sort of were like, also, we're looking forward to sharing what's next when we return to Los Angeles for our yearly showcase this summer. So they didn't reference E3, but the implication is that it's like an E3/Summer Games Fest thing where they will show stuff. And it's sort of, I don't know if this is two separate thoughts. Like we do have a show for Starfield coming.
Yeah.
Also, we have stuff coming up in the summer. Or is this an implication that the Starfield standalone show is happening during their summer showcase?
It's written very ambiguously, because you could read it as like, we're excited about our Starfield thing, and also the next time we're going to show information about Xbox stuff is in Los Angeles in the summer. Or you could read it as, hey, we're excited for our Starfield thing, and that will be happening in the summertime when we return to Los Angeles, which would mean, got to kind of announce it before it comes out, and that would indicate to me that it's not going to be coming out pre-June.
Yeah, so if that happens, then I'm fairly confident they're pushing it back. Now, last week, when they gave like the release date for Redfall, I was texting you and I was like, I think this is confirmation that Starfield is not coming out in the first half of the year.
It's a stacked first half. I mean, like Tears of the Kingdom is a juggernaut, and so far they're still maintaining it is coming out in May. And if that's the case, I think it's wise to avoid being in the first half of the year because it's going to dominate, I feel like.
Yeah, and like I was texting you and I was saying I don't think that Microsoft would necessarily want to throw two of its biggest releases of the year in the first half of the year, but also like scheduled so close to each other and also close to Tears of the Kingdom. But I guess they probably do have some other stuff for the fall. Like there's probably a Forza release coming in the fall. That was the one that they showed but didn't give an actual release date for. They just said 2023. So they've got that, and they've got they have to have some other stuff. Stuff that I'm not thinking of right now, but
yeah, what could you be not thinking of?
For sure, Silksong.
That's right, Zach. That's the number one thing on everyone's mind.
But that's not a Microsoft game. That's just a game that will be on a Microsoft platform.
And Game Pass. It'll be on Game Pass.
Yeah.
And I will say, not that I was looking at reaction videos of the Silksong trailer from last year yesterday. I was doing that. But don't forget that was the thing they opened their show with at E3 last year.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like an exclusive for them by any means.
It's true. No,
but it is a big game that they've been sort of tied to a little bit because of their showcases. But yeah, I'm just curious what first party thing they will have in the fall. But I mean, they could have stuff that is completely unexpected, like Pentiment, like they had last year. And I guess if last year, they had nothing last year outside of like some indie stuff. So if that's any indication, like they could, sort of be throwing the traditional, like you got to have a heavy hitter in the fall. They could just be throwing that script in the trash and doing whatever's available right now because of, crazy production schedules and pandemic and all of that causing delays.
Yeah, hopefully we're slowly getting out of that COVID-19 thing wrecking all of the development cycles. That also affected Silksong. So
yeah, and just like developers trying to make 80 to 100 hour games and throwing huge budgets and long development cycles and trying to make sure there's not crunch happening. It's a lot of stuff like that is causing game development to take longer than it used to.
It's true.
And I forget which podcast I was listening to, but they were talking about that Sean Layden, who was formerly the, I think, CEO of PlayStation.
I remember that guy.
Yeah, he said like back in 2020 that he was like the budgets and development cycles for these games and just the overall length of them and what's sort of expected for like a big $60 release or whatever is just completely unsustainable, and they need to like start making shorter games and stop throwing massive budgets at them and like sort of scale down a little bit on games. And this is what I said last week. I was like, they need to, like, I would love an open world RPG that was more in the like 30-hour range as opposed to like the 80 to 100-hour range. If they could make stuff like that, I would be very happy. Plus, you wouldn't be forcing like the cost of games to go up to like $70 to $80.
That's
People are not happy about that. So I don't know. We may start seeing a change, not just in like how games are developed, but like what the expectation is for how long they are. But who knows?
I wanted to bring up, so a couple weeks ago, I talked very disjointedly about what was going on with Wizards of the Coast, and there's been an update. So just as a slight recap, they this like draft of what they're doing with all the Wizards of the Coast copyrighted material got pushed out, and it was bad. It basically was going to stop people from like freely using their stuff to create their own content, which is the bread and butter of Dungeons and Dragons homebrew stuff. A lot of bad stuff was in that draft, and people were like, "This is awful." So then they pushed this guy named Kyle out, and Kyle was like, "Hey, I forget what his title is, but he's like some guy who runs Dungeons and Dragons or Wizards of the Coast or something." He's like, "Hey guys, we messed up. Sorry. Here is a survey that everyone can take, and we'll get your feedback about what about the OGL, the Open Game License 1.2 or whatever, because we don't know about keeping around 1.1a or whatever." They did that. And then in parallel with that, a ton of people canceled their D&D Beyond subscriptions. And also, Paizo, the makers of Pathfinder, which is like a kind of a competitor, but still kind of in the same realm of Dungeons and Dragons, Paizo put out like, "Hey, the most recent like making, I forget what it's called when you make a series of books. Like it's not a pressing. But like the latest edition of our books, which we expected to last us the next 8 months, sold out in 2 weeks. So a ton of people bought the Pathfinder 2e core rulebook, including myself. And I think all of the canceled subscriptions and the fact that Paizo announced like, "Hey, we're doing super good." And also, I guess everyone... Like, I think they got like 10,000 submissions for that survey they were putting about where they were getting feedback. And I think almost 100% of them were like, "Hey, you guys are doing a bad job." All of that has led them to be like, "Hey, guys, JK, we're not going to deauthorize the 1.0 OGL. And in fact, we're giving it to the Creative Commons. And so it's not even going to be under our control. It's just in perpetuity now, completely irrevocable. And we're not going to mess with it. And it's, you guys won, basically. We're sorry. Please go see our movie in the fall, in the spring." So it's kind of a big win. It's still necessary to be wary of them. And I feel like they've burned a lot of bridges and gotten rid of a lot of the goodwill they've gotten over the past couple of years. But it has a happy ending for now. The OGL is sticking around. It's no longer going to be revoked. There's not going to be any sort of weird... they had this weird stipulation in that draft where it was like animations or something. So basically it was a thing where other virtual tabletops, like Foundry, the one I use, were going to be subject to some costs to Wizards of the Coast, basically, and we're going to stop being able to use specific things. But that's all gone away. And I think hopefully someone at the ground level of Dungeons and Dragons was able to tell an executive at like Hasbro or Wizards of the Coast, like, "Hey, I told you so. Like, this was a terrible idea, and now we're in this bad situation." But it seems like they're trying to fix it. So I guess a happy ending to that, or I guess more information will be revealed later. But a weird thing that I feel like you could make a movie out of, or a show where like you see all these like shows about how like WeWork and all those other random startups that kind of like crashed and burned really quickly, like the Theranos one. I feel like you could make a really interesting Showtime show about the last 2 weeks of like what was going on at Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. But a happy ending, I guess, to be reported.
Just remember, they didn't lose. They also won.
It's true. Yeah, that was terrible.
What a horrible like PR thing to say.
And then something else I thought was cool. So Amazon, I didn't realize this, but Amazon is making the next Tomb Raider game. I guess they got the publishing rights for it. But they're also making a Tomb Raider show that's going to be executive produced and possibly written by that Phoebe Waller-Bridges who made Fleabag, which is a great show. And I don't think she's going to be in it, but she's definitely going to have a creative hand in it, which I think is cool. And it might tie into the game, or the game might be have like references to the movie, or there's a show, I guess. It's a show and a movie, supposedly, is another article I read. But there's going to be a Tomb Raider movie that's not going to have, I think it's going to be completely fresh. The last one, I think, starred that Alicia Vikander or whatever her name is.
Yeah.
So I think this one's going to be a full reboot, and a completely new retelling, probably an origin story, I would guess, of Lara Croft. What do you think about that?
I mean, I kind of don't trust Amazon to make things that are good.
Yeah.
But also, I don't really have any affinity for the Tomb Raider series.
Did you watch what's that girl's name? Who made the first Tomb Raider?
Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, did you watch the two Angelina Jolie ones?
I have not watched any of the Tomb Raider movies.
Man, the first two Angelina Jolie ones are insane in like a really fun way. Like, I believe in the first one, in her mansion, she just maintains a giant fighting robot that hunts her. And it's not really referenced again. I don't think it comes up in the plot. That's just like a thing she's doing in the beginning, is like she has a huge humanoid robot that she's battling with two guns. And that's just like how she spends her time. And it doesn't make any sense.
It was that era of movies was very over the top in a lot of ways.
I think Gerard Butler is in the second one. I actually don't remember.
I was going to say, I couldn't remember if it was him or Daniel Craig if they showed up in one of those movies.
One of them, I think, so there's two of them. And the second one, I think, is called The Cradle of Life. Or that actually might be the first one. It's very weird. I remember watching the second one, and, well, I'm going to mess this up because they get really mixed up in my head. But one of them, there's not really any supernatural stuff until like the last 15 minutes when all of a sudden there's like these ghosts that come out of trees and eat people, and nobody reacts to it. Everyone is just like, oh man, well, I got to keep going to get this jewel, I guess. Even though like the previous 2 hours they were just dealing with like guys with guns. It's I don't know. I would say if you can get them for like $1 or if you can rent them for cheap, that makes a great back-to-back pairing of Lara Croft 1 and Lara Croft. I don't remember what their subheadings are, but this, I think,
surely those are on some sort of streaming service at this point.
I think I could rent them on. They're at least rentable on like Google Play, but they probably are on like Netflix or HBO or something. But if you're in the mood for a good time, buy some, get some trashy food and just like watch this with a bunch of friends, and I think you'll have a great time. But the show, I think, will be interesting. I really like that Phoebe Waller-Bridges, who, as we all know, will be in the next Indiana Jones movie. Although I heard recently that her part got cut down for whatever reason. But I think she's playing his like niece or something. I don't really know. But she seems cool. And
the only thing I think I've ever heard about her is that she's maybe a feminist. That's the only thing I know about her.
It's true. Yeah. What's it called? Fleabag is a great show you should check out. If you really like, it's got that guy in it who played Moriarty from the Sherlock series that was on the BBC. That was the first thing I ever saw him in, but I think he's been in a ton of other stuff. He's like he was also in what's that one war movie that's all one shot from a couple of years ago? It's all one
Hardcore Henry.
No, not Hardcore Henry.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. 1917
yes.
or something like that?
Yeah, it was like, it's some year. Yeah. He was in that as well. And he's a cool scene that I watched him talk about one time on YouTube where like part of his scene, it's all one take. So part of his scene is he has to like light a lighter and he has trouble doing it. And he talked about how it was very stressful to do that. But that guy's great. I think he's only in the second season. There's only two seasons of it, but it's a great show. It's available on Amazon. But originally aired on BBC, I think. But yeah, she seems cool. She was supposed to be making a Mr. and Mrs. Smith show with Donald Glover for a while, but then that like fizzled out or something. I think maybe they both went on to do different things. So it was one of those things that was like announced, but then it never really came of anything. Like how they're always announcing like Neuromancer shows and they never make Neuromancer show.
Amazon has the rights to so many things and they're doing nothing with it.
It's true. But this I think will be cool. I like I said, I don't think she really is going to play Lara Croft, but she might be in it as like a side character. But she's a great writer. So I'm very interested to watch whatever it is. I think it'll be something to check out.
Okay, do we want to jump right into the developer showcase, or do we want to talk about some of the stuff that's out this week? Because there's a ton of stuff that
we can hit. Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is Forspoken, which I don't think either of us are going to play.
Yeah, not interested at all. It's getting very, very mixed reviews. I think most people are kind of not into it, and it's like it kind of doesn't perform all that well, or doesn't look that great graphically. And
didn't it have like a crazy RAM requirement for running on PC? Like it's requesting 32 gigabytes of RAM recommended.
I don't know. The thing I saw is on PS5, there's like the option to have it run in like graphics mode or performance mode. Mm-hmm. But if you switch it to performance mode, it like the graphics like really scale down and just look bad. And also like the movement mechanics are like the only thing that's actually satisfying about it, is like the combat's kind of bland, and like the open world feels a little vacant, and also like the writing is very cringy. That's all I know about it. I have no intention of playing it. So,
nor, like I said previously, I think this, and surprisingly, I don't know if you probably wouldn't put it in the same category, but for some reason, this and Final Fantasy 17 or 16, what's the one that's coming out?
I think it's 16.
Both of them are really like not my jam. I don't super like generic like high fantasy court politics, which I feel like is some amount of this one, and also some amount of Final Fantasy 16. I don't know. I never really got into Game of Thrones for that reason, as well as I'm not super into court politics. But other games, something that's getting rave reviews is the Dead Space remake.
Yeah, so I will probably watch this. I don't think I will play it.
I had the same thought.
I don't love survival horror, so that's why I say that. But yeah, it's getting good reviews. They have like made some nice updates to it, so it not only looks great, but it's improved in some cases or in some places throughout the game. So it's cool. I think it'll be. I don't. It's weird. Do you consider this for like a top 10 list because it's a remake / re-release? You know, it's not like a new game.
They did change a lot of things.
It is
though.
New.
Like there's definitely new content. There's new types of puzzles, and I watched like a little thing about differences in the game. There was a part in the original game which I may have played actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, because I remember this. There was a part in the game where you had to like power on these guns to like shoot off asteroids that were hitting, and it was an awful part of the game where like you basically got into a seat and you kind of had to move a cursor around and shoot these rocks, and it lasted way too long and it was very hard. It was very boring. They completely did away with that, and now there's a really cool scene where you go like you spacewalk on the outside of the ship during the asteroid storm, and you kind of have to run around, and it uses the like next gen console's ability to render crazy stuff. So like you're running around and doing the stuff, and huge pieces of asteroid are coming at you, and it's supposedly very cool to watch and like play through because you have to kind of dodge around this stuff. So parts of the game have been improved. I think also in the original, flying in zero G was bad. Like you basically had to go in a straight line everywhere. And in this one, they've completely changed it.
Yeah, you just like aimed at an area and hit a button, and you would like zoom across to where you had aimed. Now you can just like freely fly around.
So, I mean, it is a little bit of a different game. And also it looks gorgeous. I was watching some just like super 4K HDR stuff of it. And it's just like, it really is beautiful because it's a very dark game. So it really benefits from HDR.
Yeah, and people are into it in the same way they were into those like Resident Evil remakes. Yeah. So I feel like if they would put those up for like Game of the Year, maybe this has a shot at being included in that.
I think as well.
So. Even though like something like the Mass Effect Legendary Edition was not, because it was only a remaster. It wasn't like the full on remake.
Yeah.
But it just seems a little bit weird in my head to be like, this game from like 15 plus years ago. I don't know how long ago the first Dead Space came out.
It's been a while.
But it just seems weird to have a game that old that people have already played numerous times and be like, hey, this might be the 2023 Game of the Year.
It is weird.
I don't know.
Hitman World of Assassination, I should say, came out.
Yeah, I'm not really a Hitman guy.
Nor am I.
I think those games are cool. I just haven't really played them. Am I wrong in thinking that this is just sort of like culmination of all the different Hitmans.
Yeah, I think it's just a combination. It's not new content, I don't think. I think it's just a collection now. Basically, they've been putting out almost episodic content, and now it's all in one bundle. And they might add on to that, but it's it's a lot of content, I think, that is now in one package.
Yeah, basically 3 games, but with like additional like episodes that they were adding to those. So that's a lot to play, especially if you're a big Hitman fan. So
not to skip ahead, but another game that is out now is Hi-Fi Rush. Are you going to check this out?
I actually have already started it.
Oh my God.
It's on Game Pass. So I've played the first 2 or 3 levels of it. It's level based. It's a rhythm, like third person action game. And I'm not like a big rhythm game fan, so I don't know if I'll stick with it, but I think it's cool, not just because it was like a hot drop during the Xbox developer showcase, but it's got a cool like sort of like comic booky looking like hand-drawn art style to it that I think is good. And like the combat is very combo driven, but like you're supposed to be timing your button presses to the beat. And they have like a couple of ways to help you stay on beat. There's like a cat that is sort of, I think it's like a robotic cat. And so you have this like floating cat head with you that is like, you know, pulsating to the beat. So you can kind of try to use that as a visual cue to time your button presses to. Or you can also add, there's like a, I don't know music terminology, but like a thing that you can optionally have on the bottom of the screen to sort of show you cues as to when you should be hitting your button presses to be in time with the beat. And like you can sort of just like, you know, hit the button combos to do your combo and still do damage, but you do more damage if you stay on beat. The reason I kind of stopped playing when I did was it gets to a point where it's a little like, okay, well now we're going to introduce a parry mechanic, and this you can't get out of by just like pressing the button and not necessarily timing it right. You have to start timing this stuff right. And I was like, okay, well this is maybe where I push the brakes on this game. But I think it's cool. People are liking it. We'll talk a little bit more about it once we get into the showcase, but the trailer, when it first popped up, they had like that cliche, you're probably wondering, you know, who I am or how I got here. And I looked at that, I was like, are they doing this ironically? Like,
I couldn't tell.
I couldn't tell. And I was like, this is a joke. Like, this isn't for real, right? They didn't actually just do that thing that everybody makes fun of games and movie trailers for. But I guess they did, and I guess they're fine with it. But
Goldeneye also is released, but kind of in a weird way. Like, there's 2 different versions of it. There's the Switch version, which you can only get if you subscribe to the like expansion pack. Yeah, well, Switch Online, but also the expansion pack for that.
Oh yeah. The more expensive tier.
And that has online play, but it doesn't have local split screen. And then the Xbox
does it version, not have? I actually don't know this. Does it not have local?
No,
split
it
screen?
doesn't.
Okay.
And the Xbox version doesn't have. It's like that's like an HD remake. Well, not like a remake, but it's like HD, and you can upscale it to...
It's upscaled to 4K.
And that doesn't have online play, but it does have
online.
But it does have split screen, which is infuriating.
Yeah, so neither one is the like definitive version of GoldenEye that everybody would like. Like, you don't get the upscaling with the Switch version, and it like both of them are only running at 30 frames a second. I thought the Xbox one would be running at 60, but apparently the developer that handled the port was like, we tried to make that work and it broke the game, so we couldn't do it. So you don't get 60 frames a second, but the Xbox one is 100% the better one.
Yeah.
Just if you're just playing through the levels, because the control scheme has been ported to work with the Xbox controller, so it feels like a modern shooter. Whereas the Nintendo one they basically did nothing with it.
Yeah.
So if you're not one of the lucky people who was able to get like the unicorn on Nintendo's website, the Nintendo 64 wireless Switch controller, you're stuck having to like jump through a bunch of hoops trying to like remap all the buttons on your Pro controller to work with this game. And it's a little bit of a mess. You have to like look up a guide to try to figure out how to get the controls workable, basically. I tried playing this on Switch Online the other day, and I could not seem to figure out an ideal way to map the buttons to make it work. And there is a way. I've seen like videos and some articles about how you do it. And so maybe I'll just have to look up one of those if I want to play it. But 100%, if you just want to play the campaign, the Xbox, the one that's on Game Pass is the one you want to play. Because it also, like, it's going to look nicer because it's upscaled to 4K. And I think it does run at a more consistent frame rate than the Switch one. But obviously you don't get the online multiplayer, which is a bit of a bummer. So
let's talk about that developer showcase. We were texting about it the day it was going to happen on Wednesday, and you texted me like, "Hey, should we do like a hot takes after this? Do you want to get on tonight and do like a quick record?" I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And then you watched it before me, and you texted me like, "I don't know if we need to do that."
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want to say I was disappointed by this showcase, but I was not as blown away by it as I thought I was going to be or was hoping to be. Because one of the things we were looking for was a potential, like, one more thing at the end of the show that was like, Silk Song, here it is. And that's what would have been the thing that would have made us record something special for this. Also, I thought Redfall looked cool, but I was not blown away by what I saw.
Of all the things, I watched the Redfall segment the most, and it seems fine. I'm not. It's not clicked for me yet. It definitely isn't a Left 4 Dead, which I think is what everyone thought it was.
Yeah,
and they have successfully educated us about that now. So I guess in that sense, it was successful. But I don't know. I'm still not like jonesing for it. Everything else, I frankly skipped through the Forza stuff because I don't really care about that.
Well, so we can go through it here. It started out with Minecraft Legends, which between the two of us, you're the Minecraft person. And do you have any interest in this game?
Not really. The thing about Minecraft that I like is playing Minecraft. So like, it's cool to see the world in like a different perspective, like a third person, almost top down perspective. But that's not really like, there doesn't appear to be mining or crafting in this, which is what the game is. And it's just kind of like a weird, they were showing off the PvP stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't even sure what kind of game it is. Is it like a multiplayer?
I don't know. I don't know that they, I think it is both. Like you can play it either PvP or PvE, but it's not hitting for me, unfortunately. And I feel like I am like their target demo. And it's just like, I like Minecraft, but I like Minecraft. I don't like other stuff that is like has a Minecraft skin, Yeah,
well, so that's coming on April 18th. And then next up they showed Forza Motorsport. I thought there would be a number attached to it, but it's not. It's just Forza Motorsport. And that's coming sometime this year. They didn't put a specific date on it. Then they showed the Hi-Fi Rush, which we just talked about. And that's from Tango Gameworks, which is the developer of... What is it?
Evil Within.
Evil Within. And they also did Ghostwire Tokyo last year, which I really liked. And this felt like their Pentiment style game, where it's like a weird, fun little passion project with like a unique art style that like nobody really expected from that developer. Like it's just sort of a weird thing that you're a little bit like, good on Microsoft for letting a project like this happen.
Yeah.
Because it's totally not something you expect to see from that developer. But and then they talked about the next expansion to Elder Scrolls Online, but they were more like, tune into our actual showcase for this, separate to this showcase. And instead, like in lieu of actually talking about the expansion, it was basically just an ad. Like, this is why you should give ESO a shot if you haven't already. And so that was weird. But I did tune into the actual like separate thing that Bethesda streamed where they talked about Necrom, which is the upcoming expansion. And that's coming in June. They're adding a new playable class, the Arcanist, which is very cool. This is only the second new class they've added to the game since the game came out, so that's pretty cool. And it does look like a pretty cool one. It's more of a magic-based class. It seems like you're using like some sort of dark arcane magic. But you can like specialize it down different paths. It seems like you can be like more of a healer or like a soldier, or I think there was one other option as well. And like you have this ability to like throw out these weird tendrils like out of your arm at enemies. It's an interesting looking class for sure. They're also adding 2 new companions, an Argonian warden and a Red Guard guy. And so like companions is something I definitely think of when I think of like Skyrim. Like I always have a companion with me in that. I know you don't because you like to go stealthy.
Gotta go stealth.
You can get like a stealthy companion that would be like a good option. But so yeah, they started adding those. I don't remember how recently that was, but I know they had companions added in High Isle last year, which I played through. And so they're adding 2 new ones. So that's also pretty cool. It takes place in Eastern Morrowind. So you're going back to Morrowind, which was actually the first expansion to ESO that I played. And it was sort of my first real experience with ESO. So it'll be interesting to go to sort of a different area in Morrowind. And they say it's roughly about 30 hours worth of content. So
wow.
And it was weird to me because they were also like, the first sort of part of the DLC is coming in March. There's like a free prologue quest and maybe some other stuff in there. And then like the full like Necrom chapter comes out in June, and they sort of had 2 different dates. They had like the PC date, which I think was like earlier in June, and then they had like the console release maybe later in June. It was not clear to me, but maybe I just didn't look at it as closely as I should have. But they had like a whole like roadmap of stuff that was coming out, because later on in the year they're going to have like an update for like quality of life improvements and bug fixes, and then they were adding later on in the year like a new game system, which I think they said was like an endless co-op dungeon type of a thing. So a bunch more stuff coming to ESO, and then they got into Redfall, which is coming. They announced the release date for May 2nd, which is 10 days before Tears of the Kingdom.
Not a great release date, yeah.
Yeah. You got 10 days to like ram through Redfall before Tears of the Kingdom comes out.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I like Dishonored a lot. I never played Dishonored 2, even though I know I would love it. I just, for some reason, have never pulled the trigger on it, even though you can get it for like $5 now. I don't know. I don't know what's not doing it for me with this. I know that it's single player now, and you can play it with other people, but I don't know. Howard, what are you feeling about it? Are you at all interested in it?
Well, so when you said it was more of a Far Cry style game, I was like, okay, that makes me more interested than if it was a Left 4 Dead style game. And that made me think back to the original like announcement trailer that was pretty cartoony and a little over the top. And so I was almost thinking it was going to be a little bit more like What We Do in the Shadows style, you know, slaying vampires, and, you know, kind of like or what was that, Rogue Lords? Do you remember we did a video on that game? I thought it was going to be like kind of a fun take on vampires, and not like, it's scary like a zombie game, but instead of zombies, it's vampires. And this trailer made it more like, okay, this is going to be creepy and a little bit survival horror. And that made me a little bit like, I don't know.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, I'm not super into like situations where you have to walk down a hallway and like have a flashlight on.
Yeah, one of the main sequences that they showed is like, it's very dark in this like house or whatever, and you're walking around, and then like there's a jump scare, I think.
Yeah, he like bites you and you have to run away, and then you have to like run around in this small cramped house and like be turning around to shoot at him and stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not really what I'm looking for.
That kind of thing I was not into with it, but otherwise I thought like the gunplay and the different abilities that you have depending on which class you picked, like some of that seemed pretty cool. So it's on Game Pass, so I will probably download it and at least play some of it before I immediately move away to Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
But that I was texting you about it, and I think I said I predict Redfall to be the most dropped and like least completed game of 2023.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
Simply because of the fact that it's releasing just before Tears of the Kingdom, but so you think you're gonna pick up Game Pass?
I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I got some free time this weekend, and I think it's finally time for me to pull the trigger on it. So that might be something that I start to do. Although I will say definitively that I'm not going to play Silksong on Game Pass. I'm going to buy that game probably multiple times, and hopefully
special edition.
Hopefully, there's a special edition immediately.
Yeah.
So, but I will use it for like, I never played Halo Infinite.
Oh yeah, the campaign to Halo Infinite.
Yeah, I played the multiplayer some amount, but I have this new PC now, which I've only been using it for like small indie stuff. And so I wonder how it would fare with Halo Infinite. I think that would be a good test. So maybe I'll do that.
I am just looking at what's recently added on Game Pass. I've pulled up the app.
Oh.
Of course, they've got Hi-Fi Rush. Monster Hunter Rise just was added to next-gen consoles, so that's now on Game Pass. They added Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden, which are very well-liked games. They added Mortal Shell fairly recently, which is like a Dark Souls-style game. And then next month, they're going to have Atomic Heart, I think is the big one.
Yeah.
Chained Echoes is like that sort of whatchamacallit, Chrono Trigger-esque, like SNES era style top-down RPG that everybody's wild over, that I have not started playing yet, but that's on Game Pass, so you could play that. And I don't know if this is something I will play, but that Wolong Fallen Dynasty that looks kind of Dark Soulsy is coming at the very beginning of March. So you got some stuff that they added a bunch of stuff this last week and a bunch more stuff coming. So it might be a good time to jump into Game Pass.
My question to you though is, what are you playing / watching right now?
Well, so we talked about Hi-Fi Rush. I've been playing some of that, and I don't know that I will keep going with it, but I wanted to try it out because everybody was talking about it. And other than that, I've just still been playing Fire Emblem Engage, which I'm still engaging with. And for sure, it's still not as good, like writing-wise, in terms of story and character as Three Houses, but the combat is just so good. Like, it's one of those things where I was thinking, should I go back and try to play through Three Houses again and like do one of the different storylines, since I only played it through once. But now that I'm playing Engage, I'll be like, I might be disappointed by the combat if I go back to that game.
Yeah.
So hopefully whenever they make the next Fire Emblem game, they take the social system and like the quality of writing from Three Houses, but add Fire Emblem Engage's combat. And then you'll have the best of both worlds.
The perfect thing.
But yeah. What have you been playing?
So we talked about the Dungeons and Dragons stuff going on. I finally got my Pathfinder 2e core rulebook that I went to try and go buy at a Warhammer place last week. I got it from Amazon, and it's a lot bigger than I thought that it was going to be. It's like a textbook almost. It's like very thick, comically thick. But I've started to read that. It's very cool. The classes are very interesting. They have like a great thing about Pathfinder is like if you haven't played Dungeons and Dragons before, you really only get to do cool stuff a couple of times as you progress your character. Like a lot of characters will not even like pick their subclass or whatever, or their like tradition until like second or third level. And then like maybe you get something at 6th level and maybe you get something at 10th level, and they kind of parse it out. But with Pathfinder, every class, every single time you level up, you get to make all these very interesting choices. And I was looking at some of the advanced classes, or like some of the ones that came out after the core rulebook. There's one called Investigator. They have all the normal ones. They have Fighter, Wizard, Monk, stuff like that. But they have a class called Investigator, where like your key feature is that you can like clue in. You have a move called Clue into a mystery, or like follow a lead. And that basically allows you to like have advanced perception checks on things and like high level stuff. Like once you reach 19th level, you get a feat that's just like Master Detective. And what that basically does is like, if you're like following a lead, you can follow 2 leads at a time, where basically like you're following the thread. Like you can pick a thing like this person. Who is this person? I want to know. And you're following that from now on. And when you have the Master Detective feat, anytime you go to a new area and there is any kind of thing related to that thing that you're trying to track down or like know more about, the game master just has to tell you like, hey, go check this out. Because you're like, that's to like simulate how intuitive you are, which is very interesting and cool. There's a lot of really weird, interesting classes that you can be. And I'm just reading through all the backgrounds and like how to create a character, but it's a great rule book. And I've read a lot of stuff recently about how it's like more of a reference manual than anything Dungeons and Dragons puts out is. Like Wizards of the Coast put out like these fanciful player's handbooks that are like, you know, have great art and are kind of just like, if you're trying to find stuff, it's like difficult to find stuff in it. It's just more meant to be read. Whereas like the Pathfinder core rulebook like is a reference document. It has a great appendix. It has like the pages on the outside of the page are colored in such a way where you can like look at the as if the book is closed, you can like look at the side of it and like open it to the exact page that you want because it's like colored that way. Very cool, and I'm very excited to learn more about it. So I've been doing that, and then the only other thing is that Poker Face show came out on Peacock. That is that like Natasha Lyonne show where the reason I started watching it is because it was pitched to me as like a Columbo for millennials, which we're millennials, so I was like, oh, I'm a millennial, so I started watching that. It's like a week-to-week detective show with like a bunch of celebrity cameos. Like Adrian Brody is in the first episode. But it's good so far. We watched the first episode last night. The first 4, I think, are available to watch now. And then every week there's going to be another one for a couple weeks. I think there's maybe 3 more episodes in the first season. I don't know if it got renewed for a second season, but...
Do you have to sub to Peacock, or do you just have to suffer through ads if you don't?
I think you have to sub. I actually don't know. We are subscribed to it because we were watching that Paul T. Goldman earlier, which was masterfully done. If you haven't watched Paul T. Goldman, definitely check it out if you have Peacock. It's wonderful. But this is great. I like a little week-to-week. I like a serialized, or not serialized. I like a week-to-week thing where just like a person comes in and solves a mystery. That's why I used to love all those USA shows back in the day, like Monk and Burn Notice and things like that when I was in high school. But great.
I do like Columbo.
Yeah, it's I think at least the first episode is similar in narrative to Columbo, because in Columbo, I actually haven't watched a lot of Columbo, but isn't it the case in Columbo where you watch the person commit the crime at the very beginning, so you're aware of how it happened, and then Columbo comes in? It's similar to that, at least in the first episode, where you watch the crime happen, and then the main character comes in, and it's the conceit of the show is that she kind of has a magic power. Like, they don't call it that. It's just like a thing that she can do, but it is kind of magic, where she's always aware if someone is telling a lie. So that leads to interesting situations, especially if someone knows that's her like thing that she does. Adrian Brody in it like knows that she is able to detect all lies, so he's like very careful what he's always saying around her because he's the one that committed the murder in the first one, which you would know because that's like the first part of the show. But it's cool.
Of course, they would if they wanted to do a Columbo style show, they would have to give him a superpower.
Yeah, really. It's cool though. I like it if you're into detective stuff.
I was gonna ask, does it follow the same like Columbo thing where Columbo's almost just like not necessarily a side character, but like that week's episode, the murderer is like the main character, and you're just sort of following them, and like they're just as sort of nail biting as like Columbo sort of slowly zeroes in on them.
At least in the first episode, kind of, because in the first episode, it's a thing where Adrian Brody is like has this casino, and then something happens, and then a murder happens that he has to kind of cover up, and so. Then Natasha Leone, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Natasha Leone comes in and starts asking questions because the person who died is like her friend. And so she's like slowly like inching closer, and you can tell that he has like another thing going on because he wants to use her ability. So it's good. I don't know how it's going to be. Like it's a road show now. Like the first episode is kind of setting up why she has to be on the road. But subsequent episodes, it's just going to be like she rolls into a town, something starts to happen, she figures it out, I believe. But like I said, I've only watched the first episode so far, but I probably will watch more of them tonight.
Did you watch the second episode of Last of Us?
Yes, I did. Did you?
I have not. I should watch it.
I liked it. I'm into the show, and I think it's cool, and I like Pedro Pascal a lot. So I'm going to continue to watch it until I think that something that I don't want to happen is going to happen, and then I will probably not watch it for a while.
So you're going to watch up until season 2 when the bad thing happens.
You know, I still don't know, because like all of the footage they've shown in all the trailers, I don't see anything that looks like after winter of the first game. And I am still of the mind kind of that this season's going to end in winter, and then second season is going to be the second half of the game. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe the second season will be the second game. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. Who's to say at this point? But yeah, I don't know. I will probably watch until they finish like the material from the first game, because I didn't play the second one, and part of it was because I heard how different it was from the first game. I mean, also because it was like 2020, and I was like, I'm not ready for this. But also, you like, is it a spoiler to say the thing that you want to avoid?
No, I guess we can talk about it. I mean, it's been out. We can talk about it.
Okay, well, if you don't want to find out, I guess this is the end of the episode for you. But yeah, so Joel dies like pretty early on
in a brutal way.
Game. Yeah.
And it's a bummer because I guess let's talk about it, because at the like he reveals at some point to Ellie like, hey, I did this thing, or she finds it out and he basically is like, yeah, it did happen. She's mad at him. She's mad at him for a long time. And then it's revealed at the end of the game that the night before he died, they finally had a heart-to-heart, and they like kind of got common ground, and they were like kind of back to being friends, and they were going to start to rebuild their friendship. And then the day after that, she basically has to get him, or has to watch him get brutally murdered. I think like,
yeah,
I want to say that he like gets beaten to death with a lead pipe or something.
I thought it was a golf club.
Maybe it's a golf club, but it's like really soul crushing, because like you want them to have a good friendship and stuff, and they like built up this great relationship.
And that was the big driving like aspect of the first game, was this sort of like father-daughter relationship, and then to like brutally murder him in the first, like the early going of the second game, and to like force her to watch it, and then just and to not only like deal with her, you know, dealing with that, but then to also make most of the rest of the game from some completely different character's perspective is just like, I don't know. I don't think I care about this anymore.
I think it was interesting because it kind of flipped it on its head, where like, I mean, when I was playing through that game and I was playing as Ellie and going into, where's that set? Seattle?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Boston? No, it's not Boston. It's somewhere. But when I was playing as Ellie, I was that character. I was out for revenge. Like, they brutally murdered my father figure, so I'm going to kill as many people. I'm not going to stealth through any of this stuff. Like, if there's a person around, I'm going to kill them because they're part of the group. And then it flips it on its head, and you realize that it was just like Joel killed this person's father figure. And so that was like the whole first part of the game was her mission. And so it's just like this never ending cycle of like revenge begets revenge, revenge begets revenge, which eventually ends at the final part. But it was, I mean, it's really brutal because like you're as Ellie, there's a part where like you go and this dog viciously attacks you and like you kill it and you're like, good, this dog has been annoying me and now it's finally dead. But then you cut to the second part of the story and that dog is like very lovable and like is like protecting you and stuff. And it's like, man, I killed this dog who was like just kind of like in the middle of it all. And it was like a bad idea for me to do. But it really makes you think about like revenge is like not always a great idea. Even if like I was like so into it in the first part of the game, you realize like, oh, it's not like great to be into revenge, I guess. But
well, yeah, the thing I heard about it was that it was supposed to be like giving you the other side of the story. Basically, that was the whole purpose of it, where it was like, you know, it's a brutal like hellscape of a world and you have people on either side of that and they're not necessarily bad people, but because the world is like in such a terrible state that when you do end up encountering other people, very often things go poorly. And so it's supposed to make it so that like, because you have this often in like what is that show, the zombie show, Walking Dead.
Yeah,
like the group you follow in that show is just like every group of people they encounter are basically these awful human beings that want to like kill everyone and seemingly for no good reason, or they're just like really selfish and horrible people. And so this was very clearly like, what if we did that, but the people you encounter aren't terrible people, but the only way that you would know that from your interactions with them is if we force you to spend some time with them.
Yeah.
And it was a little like, I don't really care about that. I wanted to follow Joel and Ellie because the other big aspect of it was like, wasn't like the end of the first game, spoilers for where the show could be heading, but he like is forced to make a choice between sacrificing Ellie because she's immune to like the zombie thing, and sacrifice her to basically create like a cure for like everyone. And so he's forced to choose between, do I save everyone, or do I, and in doing so, kill this like daughter figure of mine, or do I save the girl and forego saving the rest of the world? And it's like a really tough decision, but like by that time in the game, of course, you love Ellie and you love the two of those characters together. And so you're like, yeah, that's probably the decision I would have made or whatever. And I expected the second game to be more like dealing with that and sort of the consequences of that. And instead it's like, well, Joel's dead immediately. And now we're hanging out with some other group of people.
Yeah.
And it was just like, whatever, I don't care anymore. But I don't know. It got good reviews.
Yeah, I really liked it. It was very emotional. I originally, like initially I was like, man, that ending was a bit of a bummer for me. But now I get it. And now I think like the through line that I think is going to be there is at the end of it, the other girl whose name I don't remember, and her pal Abby, yeah.
And she's got like, she's been on steroids. She's a very beefy person.
Her and her pal
got huge arms,
like escape or whatever, and they make it to what is revealed to be the final outpost of the Fireflies, which is like Catalina Island in California. You don't ever see them like meet up with them, but like the final shot is like the boat they took off and landing at Catalina Island. So you gotta assume the third game is going to be they've regrouped. Abby is aware that Ellie exists and has like the cure inside her. So it's going to be a thing where I would guess probably they have to like learn to work together. Like Abby comes to her and is like, hey, now's the time. You have to make your sacrifice or whatever. Let's get back to wherever. And you're going to it's going to like fully mend and come full circle, and both of them are going to realize that like even though both of them cause each other's losses, they can like push past it for the greater good, is how I interpret or how I believe the third game would go.
So she will still have to sacrifice herself, basically.
I think so. Yeah. I think she is going to have to like, she'll lie down on the table and be like, this is like, I'm ready to do it or whatever. And that's also makes me think, I don't know what this means for the show, but I could also see this being like, 10 years have passed or like 15 years have passed. So she's like well into her like late 30s or something. And then Abby comes back and is like, hey, now's the time. You've lived a life or whatever. But it could very well be like only 3 years or something have passed. I don't know.
I'm still trying to decide if that would be satisfying to see like this series that started as this like, sort of gripping father-daughter story, like journey, turning into, and like this, sacrifice of not killing the young girl in order to, save everyone else, in order to only later end with you're following a completely different character and you do end up killing the girl anyway.
Well, I could see it being an emotional thing where you're playing Ellie and like they make you walk to the room where they're gonna, put you down for the last time. And like you press the button where it's like, are you ready, to lights out? And you have to like press it in order to, and then you slowly go to sleep or whatever because they like put morphine or whatever. I can see that being very powerful.
I do find it surprising because you're between the two of us, you're the one that's the most like anti like sad endings.
It's true. I think that would,
and I think you and I are flip flopped on this series in terms of like what we want out of it and
it's weird.
How much we're willing to go with it.
Usually, I'll avoid all sad stuff. I'll try not to watch sad things, but this. And also, for some reason, Attack on Titan, I love, even though Attack on Titan is a very depressing show at times. Both of those pieces of media are like, they flip my rule on its head, and I'm like, man, I need to watch more of this because they're just so compelling.
Yeah, I think somehow when it comes to these, you and I have flip-flop places. That's weird. But yeah, and some of it is just like, I'm still so zombied out that I just don't know how much more of like a super dark, dour, like dread of a place that I want to spend more time with. But I will probably try to watch the first season of the show anyway, and just out of curiosity for like how they adapt some of it. But I don't know if I will want to continue beyond that.
Yeah, I don't want to see Pedro Pascal die. I think that's going to make me very sad. But what a twist this would be if they had that not happen. I would love that.
Yeah, that would maybe make me watch that, like continue on watching it.
If they're just like, here would be a great thing is if he does get like brutally beaten with that golf club or whatever, and they're like, oh no, he's in a coma, and then eventually he will wake up. I would love that, but I don't think it'll be as emotionally impactful.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do that. Also, I did see, maybe it was only a rumor, but I thought I saw an article where they were talking about how they were already talking about the casting of Abby, which leads me to believe that the second season will be the second game. But again, I could be wrong.
We shall see.
Well, do you have any parting wisdom for us?
I would say my parting wisdom is, Is cheese keto?
It is, yeah.
Why not have some cheese today?
I have cheese every day.
Well, that's my parting wisdom is why not have a little piece of cheese for yourself?
Give yourself a little treat. There isn't that a line? Last year I started a rewatch of Twin Peaks, and there's like a part in there that kind of cracked me up, and I was like, you know what, that's good advice. But what's his name? The detective is like, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Get yourself a little gift every day. And like the gift that they were getting was like, he was talking to the sheriff, and they were at that diner, and she was like, who wants another cup of coffee and maybe like a piece of pie or something like that? And the sheriff's like, we should go or whatever. And he's like, no, get yourself a little gift every day. And so they had coffee and pie, and it was great.
There you go.
That's my advice.
Wonderful
Get yourself
advice.
A little gift. Also, it is snowing.
Yeah.
So if you're in the Midwest and it's snowing, stay inside.
Stay inside.
And enjoy that gift inside.
Hopefully you live somewhere where you don't have to shovel too much of a driveway. But if you do, not always a terrible idea to start shoveling during the storm so it doesn't fully rise up. So like, if you think it's going to snow for like the next 6 hours, maybe in 3 hours go out and do like a preliminary one. And you're going to thank yourself when 6 hours have elapsed.
Yeah. Good advice. And on that note, we will catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.